All right, welcome to the Homework 6 Quick Start Guide. This is going to be part 1, and it's about finding the .git directory. My name is Sash, and I'm one of the LAs. Let's get started. Okay, so the goal of the assignment, hopefully you guys have already read the spec, is that you're somewhere inside a Git repo, and you're supposed to build a directed graph of all the commits in the repo with nodes representing commits and edges representing parent-child relationships. So basically, each node represents a commit and points to its children commits. And after you do that, you're supposed to generate a topological ordering of all the commits. Okay. So first step is finding the .git directory. And in the spec, it says one can do this by looking for .git in the current directory, and if it doesn't exist, search the parent directory, etc. So what does this mean? Basically, what makes a Git repo is the .git directory. So if there's a .git directory under like another directory, then like my project here is a Git repo because of the .git directory under it. So basically, let's say topple order commits.py is inside the repo. Then that means if we look in the current directory for .git, and if it's not there, we look in the parent directory for .git, and we keep going until we find a .git. Like we're eventually going to find a .git because we're inside the repo. So for instance, for topple order commits.py, we look in more code for .git, it's not there. So we move up a directory. We look in my project for .git, we found it. So we can confirm that topple order commits is inside a Git repo, and we have located the .git directory for this repo. Now, however, let's say topple order commits is not inside the repo. So it's outside this orange box right here. It's in bin somewhere. Then like no matter how far we look up and up, we're never going to find a .git directory in like the directory we're looking at. So if we're at topple order commits.py over here inside bin, while we look in bin for .git, it's not there. You look up one more time, we hit root. And when we hit root, there's nowhere else to go up, and we haven't found a .git directory. So at this point, when we hit root and there's no .git, we can just exit one with the error message that it says in the spec, because we are not inside like a Git repo, and there's no way we can find a .git directory. And this is why we only need to look up, because if we're inside a Git repo, then we only have to look up to find the .git directory. Okay, so how do we actually implement this in Python? Well, there's two modules that you want to look into, the OS module and the os.path module. The OS module basically lets you do all the different shell commands that you can think of that you just type on the shell normally. There's Python versions of all of those that you can do programmatically, and you can script them in Python. So you want to like probably read maybe a primer on the OS module if you want to. There's also the os.path module. And what this does is it lets you manipulate file paths. And here are some common functions that you want to use, some important functions that you want to use. I'll demonstrate here. So the first one is get CWD. Let me go into Python real quick and import OS so I can use these functions. Okay. So get CWD returns the name of the current working directory. It's basically like PWD in shell. So right now we're in like, if I just do os.get CWD, it's going to return the path to the directory that I'm in. And that's my repo. Cool. So next is isdir. And isdir is how you're going to like look for the .git directory. It's kind of like find in the shell if it only worked for the directories. You basically input a path and it answers the question, does this directory exist? So for instance, like, well, I know that my repo exists because I'm inside it, but just to confirm, I can do os.path.isdir, and I can do /home. Oops, I gotta put it in quotes. /home /sender / my repo. Press enter and it returns true. Now, if I put in a directory that doesn't exist, like let me invent some garbage, /home /sender /foo. well, it returns false because this directory does not exist. And you can use this to look for the .git directory. So for instance, my repo is a Git repo, as you can tell by the name. So if I do os.path.isdir, isdir /home/s under/my repo. So if it is a Git repo, then it has a .git directory right under it. So I look for the .git directory and it returns true. All right, so now we've covered how to look for the .git directory inside the current working directory. How about how we search the parent directory? Well, the way we do that is we want to chop off my repo from this path and look in like sunder for the .git, like assuming that my repo was not, we couldn't find the .git in here. We'd want to chop the like the last part off of this path and just look in the parent directory. So the way we do that is by using dir name. So if you do os.path.dirname /home/sunder/my repo, it'll just give you /home/sunder and chop off that last bit of the path. Okay, cool. So how do we implement this again? Just to review, in the spec it says you can look for .git in the current directory, and if it doesn't exist, search the parent directory. Well, how do we look in the current directory? We can do os.path.isdir and then the path to the .git that might be there. And how do we get to the parent directory? Well, we can say parent path equals os.path.dirname of like the current path, and it'll just chop off like the last bit and leave it at the previous slash. Okay, so that concludes part one. I would suggest going and implementing this now, and then once you do that, come back for part two because it'll flow better that way.